only explanation for the blessing in my life is the I will of God.
Mm-hmm.
That like Abraham, God chose and stayed ultimately faithful
Mm-hmm.
to Abraham, even when Abraham tried to make some pretty big messes.
Which he does right out of the gate, which I
yeah.
find interesting, because he's there's a famine, which does not sound like the blessing of God. Abraham, the young man, he's only 75, and he's making dumb mistakes. Although the mistake he makes with Pharaoh and his wife, he apparently makes it, 25 years later, right on the brink of them having a baby. That's
totally.
And I'm sure Sarah's just like, it's a real joy being married to this guy, because he keeps pawning me off as a wife to different people so that he can save his skin. And I find it notable that his first blessing, receiving blessing, there's a famine, he has to go to Egypt, and then giving blessing, he lies about his wife, and then these plagues hit Pharaoh's household, and not a great beginning.
But one of the things that struck me out of both those instances is that in both those instances, Abram goes away richer. in both cases, Pharaoh and Abimelech give him flocks and slaves, and so his little empire actually grows through his life. I mean, I'm like, okay, come on, God, wait a minute. Isn't he supposed to hit the wall? And
apparently not.
Yeah.
Well, here's this Abrahamic blessing. Abraham gets rich from the beginning, and yet he can't have kids. And so it's sort of like a weird, hollow blessing, because he's got resources out the wazoo all the time, but he still can't have kids, and is just a strange thing. Now, I know a lot of Pentecostals who are really into the Old Testament and believe that the gift of wealth is guaranteed to the descendants of Abraham, which of course the New Testament says we are. So is that true? And if it's not true, why not?
Well, so first of all, theologically, I don't think it's true, since that doesn't appear to be the way that Jesus was blessed, nor most of his followers. And in fact, it was kind of the opposite of that. So theologically, I don't see it. Secondly, it just, my experience says life doesn't work like that. Since I know a lot of poor Christians, some who are poor by choice, who have chosen a life of simplicity and poverty, which has definitely challenged my heart and caused me at times to make some good choices about how I live and how I take care of my money.
You're more of a covenant guy, than you're definitely not a dispensationalist kind of a guy, where God did it that way back then, and he certainly doesn't do it anymore. So why do we have a continuation of things in some cases, but not in others? I mean, why can't we get rich if we follow God?
Yeah, to me, that's one of those above my pay grade questions.
I want to get rich, Dan.
I know. Don't we all?
I'm tired of working so hard. Maybe our riches are, maybe it's a fulfillment. Like God promises these tangible things to Abraham that get fulfilled spiritually. Maybe heaven is richer than a bunch of sheep, and so the fulfillment, maybe the riches of the kingdom are and they mean more. But again, I guess we have to take the wider, longer view as opposed to the shorter, more narrow view to embrace that.
And I can't imagine when Abraham was on the mountain building an altar to put his son on.
He didn't feel too rich at that point, huh?
Whatever was down in the valley didn't count. I mean, it was like, yeah.
Well, let's fast forward to that scene since you brought it up. So God makes this promise. I think we can backtrack in a minute to a reiteration of the promise, but let's go straight to we're fast forwarding to he actually finally has a son, and then what on earth? God's next thing for him is certainly not expected. And this is a great example of people reading the Old Testament and saying these people are crazy and I can't follow this. So I'll read this chapter 22 and then invite comment. First couple of verses. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here I am," he replied. Probably thinking, "Oh, good, I get to talk to the guy that's been blessing me. We're finally at a point of victory, I've got a son." And then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, in case there's any question if it was a different one, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. What's with that?
Yeah, for sure. Only a person who has experienced God in profound ways could respond like Abraham responded, who went up the mountain with the same faith that had caused him to leave his home, that had caused him to wait 25 years for Isaac to be born. The same faith went up the mountain, and Paul wrote later, or the writer of Hebrews wrote later.
Yeah.
He went up the mountain expecting a resurrection. Whoever this God is that would ask that is also the God who I have been through hell and high water with.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's gonna take care of the situation. This God that promised is not going to take that away. He's just proved himself over and over and over and over again to this point. And I certainly have never been asked to thank you, Jesus, to sacrifice my son. I know that repeatedly God has challenged Charlene and I to take a step in a way that didn't make sense, or that meant risk in a big way, one way or another. And I know that that those moments of choice, those were probably some of the easiest choices we've made, if that makes sense. That some of the day-to-day stuff that rocks my world and causes me to worry and be anxious can cause me a whole lot more stress than those times when God said, no, I want you to do this. And we were like, whoa, wait a minute, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's going to change our lives.
Lay everything down.
And yet we look back on those and go, yeah, we didn't even hesitate because of what God had done up to that point. We were able to just say, yeah, it's going to be okay. Let's go.
Yeah.